Have you ever wondered what happens when safety third becomes a mantra rather than a joke? Welcome to the world of the Safety Third podcast, where hosts William Osman, Alan Pan, and Kevin the Backyard Scientist serve up a smorgasbord of ideas that are as disturbing as they are fascinating. Under the guise of humor and entertainment, this trio has created a platform that pushes boundaries and often veers into the realm of the bizarre. They revel in the outlandish, the peculiar, the downright disturbing. From experimenting with potentially dangerous substances to discussing concepts that most would shy away from, they leave no stone unturned in their quest for the outrageous. But while their antics might make for engaging content, we must ask ourselves, what is the price we pay for such reckless abandon? What happens when the line between entertainment and irresponsibility becomes blurred? But just how far does the rabbit hole of disturbing ideas go? Stay tuned to find out. Could Florida's infamous brainworms be the cause of such unsettling content? Now here's a theory that might just hold water. Picture this. Three brilliant minds, William Osman, Alan Pan, and Kevin, the Backyard Scientist, all potentially contracted the notorious brainworms of Florida. Yes, you heard it right, brainworms. Now let's delve into the theory a bit. Brainworms are parasites that can alter their host's behavior in ways that benefit their own survival. In humans, they can cause a range of symptoms, from hallucinations and delusions to downright disturbing behaviors. Sound familiar? Consider the Safety Third podcast. We've seen the hosts engage in some pretty bizarre discussions, from the obsession with ejaculated semen to the overly detailed breakdowns of dangerous experiments. It's almost as if their brains are being manipulated by an outside force. Could this force be the dreaded brainworms? Let's look at the behaviors of our hosts. They've shown a distinct lack of concern for their own safety, often engaging in dangerous experiments that would make a seasoned scientist shudder. They've also displayed a certain disregard for societal norms, engaging in discussions that would make most people uncomfortable. Moreover, they've demonstrated a fascinating ability to delve into the most intricate details of their experiments, often describing them with an almost manic enthusiasm. This hyperfocus is another symptom often associated with brainworms, suggesting that the hosts may indeed be infected. But it's not just their behavior on the podcast that's concerning. Off the air, they've shown a similar disregard for safety and an obsession with pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable. Could this be another sign of the brainworm's influence? Now, this theory might seem outlandish, but given the host's behavior, it's not entirely implausible. Could it be that these brainworms are the cause of the Safety Third's disturbing content? Or is it just a convenient excuse for their outlandish antics? But is it just the brainworms, or is there something more? That's a question we'll continue to explore. Did you know Nile Red's departure from Safety Third involved a dog and peanut butter? It's as quirky as it sounds. Yes, folks, you heard it right. The esteemed Nile Red, a beacon of scientific curiosity, bid adieu to the Safety Third podcast under peculiar circumstances involving, of all things, a dog and peanut butter. We've all heard of the classic trick to get a dog to take its medicine, right? Hide it in a spoonful of peanut butter and down it goes, no fuss. But to think that this simple childhood trick would play a pivotal role in Nile Red's departure from the podcast is mind-boggling. It's a story that leaves us questioning the sanity and intentions of our beloved podcast hosts, William Osman, Alan Pan, and Kevin the Backyard Scientist. Delving into the details, it seems that the incident took place during a live recording of the podcast. Nile Red, while discussing his latest experiments, found himself at the receiving end of a prank involving a dog and a jar of peanut butter. Now we're all for a good laugh, but this stunt seemed a step too far, even for the daring trio. It was a moment that redefined absurdity, making us question if their innovative ideas were truly the products of scientific genius or simply the result of some bizarre Florida brainworms. The incident naturally did not sit well with Nile Red. The disrespect and lack of professionalism displayed by the hosts were indeed unpalatable. And so, he took the only plausible course of action. He exited the podcast, leaving behind a trail of confused fans and a podcast grappling with its newfound notoriety. To sum up, Nile Red's departure from safety third, triggered by a prank involving a dog and peanut butter, sheds light on the disturbing undertones of this seemingly innocuous podcast. From Florida brainworms to dogs and peanut butter, this podcast is truly a roller coaster of disturbing ideas. But first, let's take a moment to appreciate something truly exciting and positive: Open Sauce 2024. As we momentarily step away from the critical analysis, let's immerse ourselves in the exhilarating world of Open Sauce 2024. An extravaganza of innovation, creativity, and open source technology, this event is a beacon of positivity in our tech-savvy world. Set to take place at the iconic Cow Palace, Open Sauce 2024 is where the sharpest minds gather to share, collaborate, and inspire. It's not just about tech, it's about building a community that values openness, transparency, and shared knowledge. Over 2 electrifying days, June 15th and 16th, expect a whirlwind of innovative ideas, captivating talks, and networking opportunities like no other. So, mark your calendars, folks. Open Sauce 2024 is not just an event, it's an experience of a lifetime. Now back to our critique of the Safety Third podcast. Now let's delve into the most disturbing idea yet: the inexplicable connection between an obsession with ejaculated semen and Mark Rober. Let's start by saying that this is not your average podcast topic. When you think of Mark Rober, you might picture the former NASA engineer turned YouTube sensation, known for his innovative and educational content. What doesn't typically come to mind is an association with, well, semen. Yet the Safety Third podcast seems to have found a way to intertwine these two vastly disparate concepts in a way that not only beggars belief, but also raises some serious questions about the nature of the content being produced. The repeated references to semen throughout the podcast are not only inappropriate but also completely irrelevant. Yet they persist, creating an unsettling undercurrent that tends to overshadow any valuable content that might be present. This obsession with semen, coupled with the seemingly random connection to Mark Rober, is not just confusing, it's downright disturbing. What does this say about the minds behind the Safety Third podcast? What kind of message are they trying to send, and why, oh why, is Mark Rober being dragged into this bizarre narrative? The answers to these questions remain unclear, leaving listeners to navigate the murky waters of these strange and unsettling themes. This isn't to say that all content should be devoid of controversy or edgy humor, but there's a line, and that line seems to have been not just crossed but entirely obliterated in this instance. The obsession with semen and the inexplicable link to Mark Rober serve to create a disconcerting atmosphere that strays far from the realms of acceptable discourse. As we push past the shock value and delve deeper into the content, it becomes increasingly apparent that there's more at play here than mere shock value. There's a fundamental disconnect between the content and its delivery, a dissonance that leaves listeners feeling uneasy and, frankly, a little disgusted. As we've seen, the disturbing ideas presented in this podcast are far from few. So, what does all this mean for the Safety Third podcast? It's time to draw some conclusions, folks. We've delved into the disturbing ideas that William Osman, Alan Pan, and Kevin the Backyard Scientist have thrown into the world through the Safety Third podcast. We've explored theories about potential brainworm influence, and we've attempted to unravel the bizarre departure of Nile Red involving a dog and peanut butter, and the unsettling obsession with semen. Oh, and let's not forget the inexplicable connection to Mark Rober. What we have here is a potpourri of the grotesque, the absurd, and the downright deranged. The podcast, which could have been an enlightening platform for scientific discourse, has instead devolved into a realm of twisted thoughts and questionable humor. The disturbing ideas that are thrown around like confetti are enough to make anyone shudder. What's more, the potential influence of brainworms cannot be overlooked. This isn't just about a podcast gone wrong, it's about a trio who seem to have lost sight of their original intent and in the process have potentially endangered not only their own mental health but also that of their listeners. And then there's the Nile Red departure. Dogs and peanut butter? That's a mystery that might never be fully unraveled, but it's enough to make one question the sanity of those involved. Finally, the obsession with semen and the inexplicable connection to Mark Rober. This isn't just unsettling, it's downright unnerving. What started as a podcast for scientific exploration has morphed into something far from it. All these elements combined paint a grim picture of the Safety Third podcast. It's a sad state of affairs when a platform that could have been used to promote scientific knowledge and inspire young minds instead turns into a breeding ground for distasteful humor and disturbing ideas. Perhaps the question we should be asking isn't safety third, but rather safety at all?
Dumpster diving with the host, we're having a blast. William Osman, Alan Penn, and Kevin, you're moving so fast. The Safety Third podcast crew, they're wild and untamed. In a world of blood-stuffed tubes, our pleasure is unchained. Screaming loud, we're rebels, breaking all the rules. We're having a pleasure party, no time for being cool. William's got his laser cutter, Alan's got his electric shock, Kevin's got his backyard science. We're turning up a notch. Pleasure party in the dumpster, going insane. With the Safety Third crew, we're unafraid to feel the pain. Bugs, life, pleasure tubes, our playground in the night. We're rebels of science, this pleasure is alright.